March 12th, 1978. Charles Bronson walked into a small Italian restaurant in East Los Angeles called Mama Rosa's. The place was struggling. 3 customers at dinner time, paint peeling off the walls, an elderly woman in the kitchen cooking alone while her son tried to manage the front of house. Charles had discovered it by accident 2 weeks earlier, got lost, driving back from a location scout, stopped for directions, and stayed for the best ossobuco he would eaten outside of Italy. He would returned 3 times since, always when the restaurant was nearly empty, always leaving generous tips. On his 4th visit, he found the son, Marco, putting up a for sale sign in the window. "What is happening?" Charles asked. Marco looked defeated. "We cannot make it work. Mama's getting old. I cannot run it alone. We owe too much. Someone offered to buy the building for a parking lot. We are taking it." Charles looked around the empty restaurant, at Mama Rosa in the kitchen, still cooking with pride, despite knowing it was ending. At the worn but clean tablecloths, the family photos on the walls, the care that had gone into a place nobody came to anymore. "How much do you owe?" Charles asked. What happened next stayed secret for 25 years. Charles bought the restaurant, not to flip it or close it, to keep it running exactly as it was. He became the silent owner, never told anyone, never a penny of profit. Every dollar the restaurant made went to feeding the homeless in the neighborhood. For 25 years, Mama Rosa's served 2 groups, paying customers during the day and homeless people for free every night. Nobody knew Charles Bronson owned it until the deed was found after his death in 2003. This is the untold story of the restaurant Charles secretly owned for a quarter century, and why he spent millions keeping it alive to feed people who could not pay. Marco and Rosa De Luca had opened the restaurant in 1955. Ornistelle was a thriving Italian immigrant neighborhood. For 20 years, Mama Rosa's had been packed every night, families celebrating, neighbors gathering, the smell of Rosa's cooking drawing people from blocks away. But by the mid-1970s, the neighborhood had changed. Many Italian families had moved to the suburbs. The area became poorer, rougher. Customers stopped coming. Rosa, now 67 years old, still cooked with the same passion, but empty tables do not pay rent. Marco had tried everything: advertising, price cuts, delivery service. Nothing worked. By early 1978, they were 3 months behind on rent, owed money to suppliers, and had no path forward except selling. When Charles asked, "How much do you owe?" On March 12th, 1978, Marco listed it out: $15,000 in back rent, $8,000 to food suppliers, $4,000 in other bills, $27,000, a catastrophic debt for them, pocket change for Charles. "And how much to buy the building?" Charles asked. "The owner wants $85,000. Charles thought for a moment. "I will give you $150,000, $85,000 for the building, $27,000 to clear your debts, and $38,000 as operating capital for the next year." Marco stared at him. "Miss Bronson, we cannot accept. You are not accepting charity. I am buying a business. Here are my conditions. Rosa stays in the kitchen, cooking exactly what she wants. You manage the front. The restaurant stays open, and every night after you close to paying customers, you open for 2 hours to serve anyone who is hungry, whether they can pay or not. Serve homeless people for free? Yes, you cook the same food you serve during the day. You treat them with the same respect. No questions asked about their circumstances. Just food and dignity. Ms. Bronson, that will cost. That is my problem, not yours. I am the owner. You are the operators. You run the restaurant during the day and make money. I fund the night service. Deal? Marco looked at his mother through the kitchen window. She was watching them, not understanding the conversation, but sensing something important was happening. Why? Marco asked. Why would you do this? Charles was quiet for a moment. Because I grew up poor. Because I know what it is like to be hungry. And because your mother's ossobuco deserves to be eaten by more people than 3 customers a night. They signed papers that week. Charles bought the building through a shell corporation, registered to his lawyer's office. His name appeared nowhere in the documents. To everyone except Marco, Rosa, and Charles's attorney, Mama Rosa's was still owned by the De Luca family. The restaurant underwent subtle changes: fresh paint, new kitchen equipment, repaired booths. Nothing fancy. Charles insisted it keep its neighborhood character, but functional improvements that made operations easier. More importantly, something else changed. Every night at 9 p.m., after the last paying customer left, Marco would prop open the door and put out a sign: community dinner, all welcome. The first night, 3 homeless people came. Suspicious, expecting a catch, Marco sat them down, brought them menus, treated them exactly like paying customers. Rosa cooked pasta, chicken, vegetables. Real meals, not leftovers or charity scraps. Word spread quickly in the homeless community. By the end of the first week, 20 people were coming to the nightly dinners. By the end of the first month, 40. Marco called Charles. We need more food budget. We are serving 40 people a night for free. Good, Charles said. Order whatever you need. Send the bills to my lawyer. Charles, this is costing you thousands. That is the point. Keep cooking. For 25 years, this pattern continued. During the day, Mama Rosa's operated as a normal restaurant. Modest prices. Good food. Slowly rebuilding its neighborhood reputation as word spread about Rosa's cooking. It never became trendy or packed, but it became sustainable. Enough customers to keep the doors open. At night, the restaurant transformed into a community kitchen. Homeless people, working poor families who could not afford restaurant meals, elderly neighbors on fixed incomes, anyone who was hungry was welcome. Rosa did not just cook for them. She cooked for them the same way she cooked for paying customers. Homemade pasta, slow braised meats, fresh vegetables, desserts, coffee, the same dignity, the same care. Marco estimated that over 25 years, they served approximately 275 free meals. Some people came once, some came every night for years. The restaurant became a fixture in the neighborhood, not just for food, but for stability, a place where you were treated like a human being regardless of your circumstances. Charles visited occasionally, always during the day, always as a regular customer. He would eat, chat briefly with Marco or Rosa, pay his bill with a generous tip, and leave. He never acknowledged his ownership. To other customers, he was just another person who liked the food. A few times over the years, Marco tried to thank Charles more formally, to acknowledge the magnitude of what he was doing. Charles always shut it down. This is not about gratitude. This is about what the restaurant should be. Just keep doing it. The cost was substantial. Beyond the initial $150,000, Charles funded approximately $8,000, 10 per month, in operating subsidies for 25 years. The restaurant's daytime revenue never fully covered its total costs. The free night service was too expensive. Charles made up the difference every month, never complaining, never questioning. Total cost over 25 years, approximately $2.08 million. Return on investment, $0. Charles never took a penny out. Every dollar the restaurant earned during the day went straight back into operations. In 1995, Rosa died at age 84, still cooking until 2 weeks before her death. Her funeral was attended by over 300 people, many of them homeless individuals whose lives she would fed for years. They pooled money to buy flowers, stood in the back of the church, and cried. After Rosa's death, Marco worried the restaurant would close. He called Charles. "I cannot cook like Mama did. Maybe it is time. Hire a cook," Charles said. "Someone who knew her. Someone who can honor her style. The restaurant stays open." They hired Teresa, who would work with Rosa for 15 years. The food remained excellent. The free dinners continued. In 2003, Charles Bronson died. Marco attended the funeral, sitting in the back, crying quietly for the man who had saved his family's restaurant and fed his neighborhood for 25 years. A few weeks later, Charles's attorney contacted Marco. "Mr. Bronson left specific instructions about the restaurant. The building and business are being transferred to you, free and clear. But there is a condition." "What condition?" "What condition?" "That you continue the free dinner program as long as you operate the restaurant. If you sell or close, the building and any proceeds go to a homeless services charity. Mr. Bronson set up an endowment to fund the free dinners for the next 20 years. You do not have to subsidize them anymore." Marco sat in stunned silence. Even in death, Charles was making sure the homeless were fed. The story of Charles's ownership only became public in 2004, when a financial journalist investigating Charles's estate discovered the restaurant ownership in probate records. She visited Mama Rosa's, talked to Marco, and wrote an article, "Charles Bronson's Secret, the restaurant that fed the homeless for 25 years. The response was overwhelming. Donations poured in from people wanting to support the restaurant. Other restaurants in Los Angeles started their own free dinner programs, inspired by Charles's example. A movement grew. Bronson tables, restaurants dedicating one night a week to free community dinners. Marco was interviewed dozens of times. He always told the same story. Charles never wanted recognition. He just wanted people fed. He would sit in here eating pasta, and at the next table might be someone who would come to the free dinner the night before. Charles never acknowledged the connection, never treated anyone differently. To him, everyone deserved good food and dignity. That was it. No complications, just feed people. In 2010, a documentary filmmaker asked if he could interview the homeless individuals who had been fed at Mama Rosa's over the years. Marco helped him find dozens of people. Their stories were remarkably similar. "I was at my lowest point, hungry, alone, ashamed. I heard about Mama Rosa's. I walked in expecting a soup kitchen. Line up, get a bowl of something, eat, standing up. Instead, they sat me at a table, gave me a menu, brought me real food, treated me like I mattered. It saved me. Not just the food, the dignity." One man, Robert Jimenez, had been homeless in 1982 when he first came to Mama Rosa's free dinners. He returned for 3 years, eventually got into a rehab program, found work, rebuilt his life. In 2009, he was a successful contractor with his own business. "I owe my life to that restaurant." To Mama Rosa, to Marco, and to Charles Bronson, who I never met, but who decided my hunger mattered. When I got back on my feet, I started eating there during the day, paying customer. And every week, I would slip Marco extra money for the night service. It is my way of paying forward what Charles Bronson gave me. The restaurant still operates today. Marco is in his 70s, still managing it. Teresa is still cooking. The free dinner program continues every night, funded by the endowment. Charles established and supplemented by donations from the community. On the wall near the kitchen, there is a simple plaque that Marco installed in 2005 in memory of Charles Bronson, 1921, 2003, who believed everyone deserves a good meal and to be treated with dignity. This restaurant stands as his legacy. March 12, 1978. Movie star walked into a failing restaurant and asked, "How much do you owe?" March 12, 1000. That movie star spent $150,000 to keep it open, then $2.08 million more over 25 years to feed people who could not pay. March 12, 1000. Charles Bronson started a 25-year commitment to feeding the homeless that nobody knew about until he died. No press releases, no publicity, no tax deductions claim for charitable giving. Just a monthly check to keep a restaurant running and hungry people fed. 275, zero free meals over 25 years. Most of them served by an elderly Italian woman who poured her heart into feeding anyone who walked through the door. Funded by a movie star who believed that good food and dignity were not luxuries, they were rights, and that wealth meant nothing if you did not use it to help people who needed help. The tough guy who owned a restaurant nobody knew about, the action star who spent millions feeding the homeless in silence, the man who ate pasta at a table next to people he would fed the night before and never acknowledged the connection. That is not Hollywood. That is just Charles Bronson being who he was when nobody was watching, except somebody was watching. 275, zero somebodies, and they never forgot.